this, and we need to have the good music to start with. You guys hear that?
Yeah, it's a little quiet. Is this your intro podcast music?
A new website I found called Art List. You can get music, licensed music for videos and stuff.
Oh yeah, I use that for my video stuff. It's really nice. You don't have to worry about. Yeah, you don't have to worry about like copyright stuff, which is nice.
Yeah, because you buy it, right?
Yeah, so you buy the. Did you buy the subscription, or are you just looking at it?
No, I'm just looking at it.
Oh yeah, so you buy the subscription, and then you can download the songs and use them as many times as you want. You don't have to worry about problems. So it's good for like videography work. Like I've done it with some like wedding videos I've done, which is nice. But
you gonna introduce us?
Let me ask her if she wants to come.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, hey.
Yeah, we can hear her.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
So you making sure that he does KP duty?
Yeah, and make sure he does his homework.
Okay.
See, the truth is she's making me peel the potatoes.
I put in the work.
All right, so guys, let's get to this stuff. Couple things for you. Just wanted to read this. This is off actually a British newsletter that I get. It says, structure or form is the arrangement of story elements according to purpose, style, and genre. Structure doesn't just happen on its own. Rather, it's carefully considered by the author to make sure their intended meaning is conveyed. In order for a story to be truly immersive, the structure must play the part of a skeleton. In other words, the structure supports the story to ensure the most powerful delivery of elements, yet in a manner unseen and not yet identified by the reader, viewer, or participant. Structure may be confused with plot. I'm not hearing you, Matthew. Matthew, you talking? Can you hear me, Josh?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think his mic is still off. At least that's what it says on the screen.
Bottom left-hand corner of your screen, is there a mic that has a cross through it, Matthew? Can't hear a word you're saying. Okay, Matthew, let's see, try this. Sorry, Josh.
You're okay. It's all good. I didn't realize it's just the three of us.
So far.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good.
I actually need to talk to you about something.
Okay, let's do that after, okay?
Yeah.
So as I was saying, did you hear anything I said before?
A little bit of it, not much.
Okay, just structure or form is the arrangement of story elements according to purpose, style, and genre. Structure doesn't just happen on its own. Rather, it's carefully considered by the author to make sure their intended meaning is conveyed. In order for a story to be truly immersive, the structure must play the part of a skeleton. In other words, the structure supports the story to ensure the most powerful delivery of elements, yet in a manner unseen and not easily identified by the reader, viewer, or participant. Structure may be confused with plot. While the plot is the events in the story itself, heavily affected by character, setting, and theme, the structure is how these elements are presented to the reader, viewer, or participant. Okay, and why do you need structure? Because it's the literary device that turns words and sentences into story. It aims to present that story in the most favorable way for a specific audience. The writing process is more than simply piecing together words on a page. You guys have any questions about story or about structure?
Have you ever seen a script written where it doesn't have, you know how everybody's like, you need the three main parts of a story or the structure of a film?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen a film that just doesn't have an ending, or it doesn't have one of those main parts that has done well?
All the time. In fact, Steven Spielberg made the comment, he said the biggest problem with films right now is they do the first act and it just keeps going. You never move on from that first act. And I see that all the time. Don't usually remember those films because they don't make an impression on you. That's a big thing they do. So
I think I was watching a YouTube video the other day, or not the other day, but I've seen it before, and it talks about, I can't remember what it was, but it was saying that the guy that was talking was saying that not every story needs like every point, but there is like a kind of a minimal amount of points that you do need for the audience to recognize that it is a story. That makes sense. I don't know if that's true, but
well, the whole thing with story structure is you don't need all those points unless you want a good story. You know, if you have those points, then you have a good story. It creates a good story. That makes a difference. So.
Whoa! Everyone just popped on.
Showed up. Yep. So one thing I was thinking of as I'm reading through your stories is that your scripts is that sometimes there's not really a difference between the acts, if that makes sense. And by that, I mean, I don't mean that you have to say, hey, this is act one, this is act two. But it like we were just saying, the first act has to end and you have to move on. But one of the most important things for a story is the ending, the denouement. I want to talk about that just a little bit. And I've got this written up. If you guys would like a copy of it, I can send it to you. Okay, the denouement is the final scene or sequence that shows, not tells, that the audience, the protagonist has changed and is now a better person. That's the whole idea of a story. It's about transformation of from where an individual is to something better. Okay. This is only successful if the protagonist has a flaw, which has stopped them or deterred them from solving the conflict. Your flaw has to be introduced in the first act. It's a lifelong pattern for the protagonist. It's the one thing that keeps them from progressing in life and reaching their goals. Whether that goal is to win the heart, or to win the battle, or to get the job, whatever that goal is, there's something within the protagonist that they do themselves that stops them. It could be a mindset, it could be a habit. Those are the flaws I'm talking about. The flaw shows up again at the dark night of the soul beat, okay, after the all is lost moment where the protagonist has suffered. He or she returns to old habits, which means the flaw or flaws, and as they try to return to the old world, the issue is the events, obstacles, even successes from Act 2, other or upside down world, has changed the protagonist, and going back is not a reality. I don't know if that made sense. Anyway, at the dark night of the soul, the flaw shows up again because the protagonist wants to move backwards in what they're doing. They want to go back to where it's safe and secure, but they can't because the events have changed them and they're in a different place now. You know, it's going back to your elementary school and realizing you don't fit in the desk anymore. You know, it's seeing an old girlfriend and realizing, yeah, it's a good thing we didn't last, you know, or boyfriend, you know. At this point, the protagonist has to pull himself up and challenge and faces the challenge head on. This is the break into three moment as the story moves to Act 3 and the biggest obstacles yet. Remember in Freytag's pyramid, okay, he's got, let's see, do it this way. I think that works for you. Anyway, the first act is pretty mundane. You get into the second act, you have the rising action. The third act is the highest point of all that action, with the climax being at the top. So as you get into that Act 3, the protagonist has to fail more times. Okay, it has to be greater failure. This helps solidify the story. If the fails are personal, you know, for example, in Act 3, the protagonists they must gather the team. Okay, this is a task where they must apologize or mend relationships. They need to get the people who have supported them that maybe have been hurt and get them back on their side. Okay, they have a new way of thinking. And they execute a new plan, thinking they now have the advantage through new knowledge or weapons. They get to the high tower surprise where they attack the antagonist, and the plan fails miserably, and they're ready to die. In fact, many of the team members often die at this dramatic point. This could be the big battle scene at the very climax of the story. At this point, the protagonist has to dig deep, and this is the moment when the protagonist places the interest of the group or greater good above their own interest. They shed their old selfish ways like a snake sheds its skin to reveal their new, better person underneath. They have to go through that final change, or it's not going to be a solid story. Okay, execution of a new plan. This is the last part. This is the make it or break it moment for the world. Not everyone but the protagonist, make it break the world. When everyone but the protagonist is beaten, somehow against all odds, the protagonist faces the antagonist in a final battle and wins. Okay, with all that, this is why the denouement is so important. It's the final moment in a hero's journey that matters. We understand they've changed and have become better, and the world is better for it. What's the movie with Strange Things? Is that it? One where the guy.
Oh, sorry.
His life is being narrated and written out by the author.
Oh, Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah, Stranger Than Fiction. That's it. Stranger Than Fiction. We watched that the other day, and the interesting thing about that is his big thing is he doesn't want to die. He realizes who this author is and does some research on her, and finally gets to meet her and says, "Look, I'm the real guy. I'm real. I don't want to die. You're going to kill me." And she says, "They always die. All my heroes die," in her book. So she gives him the paper, and he reads through it, you know, and this is the point where he thinks it's going to work. He's going to be able to convince her not to kill him. And he reads the script, reads her book, and at the end of it, he goes back to her and he says, "You're right. I have to die." And so that's the point where he's going to give himself up for the greater good so the story can go on. And that moment when he does that is when he really wins, because now she feels the guilt of actually killing somebody and realizes she can't do that. So as she goes back and rewrites it, and he lives through it, and we don't see what she's done. In fact, we don't see her rewriting it until it's played out in front of us, where instead of stepping in front of a bus and dying, he lives, and he goes on to have this better life. And it's a whole new change within everything. But that's just a really, really well-crafted show if you want to watch it for those kind of things. So, and with all that, any questions you guys have for me? Come on, bring them on.
I just have a question. Have you seen The Boy in the Striped Pajamas?
I have not.
Okay. Well, I guess technically, well, Okay, never mind. I don't know how to explain the situation then. Because, I mean, going off of like the denouement, they're supposed to be kind of like that look of like what they've learned. Because in that story, basically, do you know what the story's about or no?
I don't remember.
Right. So basically, it's a German family. One of the dad is like sent over. He's over a concentration camp. Anyways, one of his sons, he's like probably 10 years old. Anyways, he ends up finding a Jewish boy. He finds like the fence.
Oh,
Anyways,
that's right. Yeah, and they have this relationship through the fence, right?
Yeah. And so the very end, I mean, obviously the boy dies. And I didn't know if the denouement is when, because I guess the story is also about the dad, of how the mom and dad kind of have this argument of, you know what we're doing. The mom doesn't really agree, but the dad's just following orders and type of thing. And it was the very end of the movie when the mom finds out that her son dies. There's a shot of the dad, and you kind of see his realization. So I didn't know if that was kind of the denouement of he kind of learned his lesson, or if it's kind of his realization, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Of what's happened.
Well, the interesting thing with is it an ensemble cast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. With an ensemble cast, and I'm the only one who I know even thinks this way. I think that every character within that cast represents a different emotion or a different feeling, different ideas, for all within the same character. So if you look at the ensemble cast as being one person, then those people bring out the different things. Okay, or show different experiences. So that by that, with the ensemble, then each character can experience a different denouement. They can experience a different climax as they go through it. It's just whichever one you decide is the main character that it's going to be told through.
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Okay, other questions?
I got a question.
Sir?
Well, I guess I got two questions. First question is the embarrassing one. When's the latest we can turn in assignments?
You know, I know you guys are locked in your house. You've got nothing to do. You got Netflix. You got the bag of popcorn. You're calling a friend. It's okay to do some homework too. Just saying, you know. And believe me, this isn't the only class. I mean, you can tell by the number of participants how this thing has dwindled.
There's definitely nothing to do. I have 6 classes I have finals for this week.
Yeah, okay. And I understand that, you know. Let me pull up the calendar here real quick. Okay. If you look at the calendar, there's really the last day of class is the 23rd. I did have this on here, but this is test week, right? Finals. So we won't do that one. In fact, let me just delete it now. Okay, the what did you learn is basically your final. It's because I have to give you something on the day you have final scheduled. So when do you think should be the last day to accept assignments?
The 9th.
The 9th? Oh, that's back here.
No, of May.
No, I've got to have grades in by then.
So the 8th.
No. I'll tell you what, I will take whatever you've got up to the 30th. Okay? That gives you, 10 days of counting today to get things in.
Yep.
7th.
No, today's 21st. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, he was asking if we could have till the 7th.
No, because I gotta do grades before then, guys.
The 30th makes sense.
You know, this is coming to an end.
Yeah, it really shouldn't be that hard for us to get stuff in by the 30th.
Yeah, I mean, because I know you've been working on it constantly and having evaluations and having your friends read it, things like that.
Yeah.
Right, really make it work. So, no, it's unfortunately, and this quarter really sucks for me as well as for you guys. You know, there's so much more that we can do when we're in person, when we can have that face to face, when we can exchange a lot more. And this is at this point, it's kind of a poor substitute for the class. But I can only help if you turn things in. You know, I know some of you have been doing reviews back and forth, and I appreciate that. It's helped other people. Many of your scripts I've already gone through and given you some edits and notes, and I will continue to do that right up to the very end. You know, and even after this class, get a hold of me. I'm happy to help you guys, you know, with whatever you're working on. One thing I really noticed in a lot of the scripts I'm reviewing is it seems to me that you're still thinking in terms of narrative, and that you're writing a book or you're writing a long story as opposed to a film. The biggest difference being every little detail is written out. The way somebody breathes, the way they step. You don't need that. You know, they walk into a room, not John walks in first, followed by Bill, Todd, Sarah. You know, you can be more general sometimes in what you're saying, but you still have to be lyrical, and you still have to make it an interesting read. Because if it's not an interesting read, nobody's going to get past that. You know, there's a couple of different videos and things. I sent you the one about from Final Draft on the first 10 pages and how important that is. You know, there's a kind of the rule of thumb is if the first 10 pages don't grab you, the audience, they throw it away. It's not going to go on from there. So your first 10 pages have to be some of your best work, but you also need to continue that on. Some people they'll read page 1, page 10, page 50, page 80, just to see what happens. And it has to be your ability to tell the story on all those pages that makes it interesting. So, other questions you have? Anyone?
Yeah.
Anyone?
So for the denouement, when you're finding it for your character, does it work differently when it's a like a tragic character?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting thing with tragedies, because in tragedies, your protagonist dies. You know, back in the old Greeks, there was only two genres. There were tragedies and there were comedies. You knew the hero was going to die. It was just how. If your hero dies, though, you can have the denouement, or you can, which is really showing the change of how they've changed. You can have that before they die. Make sense? You know?
Yeah. So what if the character doesn't die?
Well, tell me about why it's a tragedy then.
Can't it be a metaphorical death?
Yeah. I guess because I can think of like a Face in the Crowd. If you've seen that,
A long time ago.
that old movie. Yeah. So that's with who was it, Andy Griffith.
Mhm.
And it's only until like the very end of the movie where he realizes like he didn't get what he needed, but he got what he wanted, but not what he needed. And then like the last minute of the movie is when he realizes that, and then it ends.
And then, that's it. Huh?
And it's great, like because you see like his like rise to power kind of thing, how he's like manipulating people, and he keeps pushing it and pushing like his ambition.
But you also see the change in him, right? I mean, does he change in the end?
Well, that's the thing is I think he doesn't, but he realizes that he's supposed to, but it's too late because he was also like supposed to get the girl in the end, but she runs away from him, and that's how it ends. How like she just leaves him.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at it. Maybe give you some more insight on it.
Okay.
You know, the thing that's interesting with Dana was, I believe I mentioned it in class, that in the original Karate Kid, Daniel wins the tournament. He gets the points and he wins, and he looks over at Mr. Miyagi and he just nods. That's the entire denouement right there. It's simply that exchange in the look and nod. You know, Daniel has overcome. He's had all these obstacles, and it has gotten right down to him. You know, the greater good being the fact that he beat this group of misfits, you know, and made the world a better place, I guess, by doing it. Sometimes too, like we watched the Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, that old movie. It's kind of interesting because as you watch it, you really think it's Jimmy Stewart's story because he's the one telling it. But you can go back and realize that it's his wife's story, or even the character of John Wayne, who in this one, it is, if you look at him as the protagonist, it is a tragedy because he dies at the end, and they come back to pay homage to him. You know, and it's a misunderstanding of who gets the credit for shooting Liberty Valance. So it all depends upon which angle you're looking at on the story.
Mm-hmm.
But I would take and, you know, decide what you want for your story. If you know where you're going, it's so much easier to get there. You know, that's why outlining is so good, as opposed to seat of the pants. But I know everybody does both. If you know where you're going, if you know the flaw that you want to fix in your protagonist, then you can do that. You don't have to fix all of them, okay? But you have to have what's the flaw? What's wrong with this protagonist? Make sense?
Yeah.
You know, you've got I keep thinking of You've Got Mail, that old movie. You know, where depending upon who you consider to be the protagonist, it's who wins. Okay, who really, they both get what they want, but they're coming at it from different directions. You know, so anyway, anything else you guys need? Other questions?
I do have a question about like action. So I added a few more pages last night, and it was all just like action stuff, and it was, and I just wonder about like how in depth to do action, like fight scenes type stuff, because these are very much storytelling elements. They're not just superfluous fighting. It's actually telling backstory and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, like, on the depth at which you go into telling that type of.
Well, as long as you're not talking about emotion or anything, you got to show the emotion.
Right.
You know, in the original Ben-Hur, and actually, I think all of them, it's they get to the chariots and it says they race, and that's it. It's one line and there's 10 minutes. And yet in Rocky, when that was written, he wrote down every punch, every jab, every movement in that thing was choreographed. But he was coming at it from a boxer's point of view, too.
Yeah.
Kind of the rules are, if you've got all this action, you got to have people saying something. You know, 4 or 5 lines of action, give me a dialogue.
Right. Huh. Yeah. I guess it's just like, how much can you rely on the director to know, like, because like saying they race, you know, like you have to have a lot of faith in your director being able to tell a compelling story with that. you know.
Sure.
And I was wondering, like, how much can you expect, you know, as opposed to do you need, like, I don't think that would fly nowadays, like from somebody unknown. But
Hmm.
Well, I
I
don't
guess.
know. It can. What were you going to say, Andres?
Oh, I was gonna say like I guess it also depends like how much detail you want to go into it is like determined by what you planned earlier too. Like if there's a certain object that one character has to use that you planned earlier, then you do have to put that in the action scene if you want that to be paid off. But you also don't want to choreograph the whole thing.
You know, let me ask you this: how much of what you're writing in this action moves the story forward, as opposed to just creating an event?
it serves as telling the story of one of the characters' motivations.
Is it a flashback?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why, is there something?
Well,
He knows.
have any of you been watching this new series Virgin River on Netflix?
No.
No.
It's a story about this gal who is a nurse, and she sells her home and moves to this town where she's never been, and it's a little dinky town, and anyway, there's all the conflicts that ensue, but they keep doing flashbacks on her life. You know, somebody asks her where's her husband because she's wearing a wedding ring. Well, we're into episode 4, and we still don't know what happened to the husband. Those different things, and it almost gets annoying, all the flashbacks, so I would be careful with that. And if it's a flashback, why can't it be in the first act to tell us more about the protagonist?
So this is kind of like a reveal, and it's the only flashback, except for at the very beginning. It's kind of like a prologue type thing. I don't know. It's probably bad storytelling, but it's so it's told chronologically until this point, which is a reveal for why this one character actually does, but it also includes, you know, 2 of the other characters' stories along with it. So it's not just saying one thing. It's telling story about 3 different characters, but definitely giving the motivation for one.
Well, remember the Cowboy Bar? 3 pages to describe it, or the fact he walks into the typical cowboy bar. How much does your audience know, and how much are you educating about the situation?
Quite a bit, because this character's been pretty silent, you know, pretty like silent brooding through the whole thing, and like you find out that this is kind of why.
Hey, Colt.
Yeah.
Have you seen Once Upon a Time in the West?
Long time ago.
Okay, because like what you're talking about sounds like exactly like one of the characters in that movie. It was I think it was Charles Bronson's character where he's like mostly silent throughout the movie and you're not sure what his motivation is. Just that he's like looking for this one particular guy, and then I think like yeah, at like the climax of the movie there is a flashback that shows why he's doing what he's doing. Don't know if you want to check that out.
Might have to check it out.
Yeah, it's reminds me of a script a friend of mine has. He's made half a dozen movies, but he's got one where the protagonist doesn't say anything till almost the climax of the movie. You do have flashbacks of him being a little kid, but the whole thing is he's contemplating his dad is dying, and his dad was not a nice person to him, and he has to decide what to do with him. And all the family is telling him to just leave him at the hospital and let him die. But in the end, he brings him into his home and takes care of him. So there's a definite change and growth within that character, but that kind of reminds me of it. Anyway, so we have like 3 minutes left. I will post a link to this video so you guys can look at it. If you have further questions, email, call, video, chat, whatever. I'm lonely. I'm waiting. I look at this blank screen.
Well, I uploaded my new pages. If you want to look at those and tell me what you think.
Okay.
I just uploaded them like an hour ago, I think. So.
All right. And Josh, Sarah went through your script and posted that back in the Dropbox under your file.
Sweet. All right.
So,
Did I just go back to? Okay. Yeah. I'll
yeah,
find
just
it.
go there and you can open it up. Okay. Well, let me leave you with a little bit more music then.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's nice. The Bob Condor podcast.
Bass solo over.
I definitely listened to the Bob Condor podcast.
Hey, this is Bob Gonder Bobcast right here on ZOM, your Zoom radio network.
Oh,
And remember,
I
keep
meant
your butt in the chair and keep writing.
I did want to mention so I was listening to that podcast, that Script Notes podcast you sent out.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how they play D&D, and I actually I also play D&D, but also I listen to other podcasts that have to do with D&D, and like one of them that I listen to, both of the guys that were hosting it they both have BFAs in screenwriting, and they're both DMs for Dungeons and Dragons, and they were talking about, you know, the crossover and the storytelling elements and stuff like that, and it was just really interesting. If anybody wants to listen to it, you can message me or whatever.
Okay, we're going to go away here real quick because we're out of time, guys. So remember, BIC.
BIC. Got it.